Welcome back everyone to another video with Argo. I'm Z-Rec and we're back after about a 2.5 month hiatus. I know it's been quite some time, but we're back and we're going to be kicking off 2019 with a standard format feature match between Angel Feather and Murakumo. For the sake of orientation, we're going to have player 1 be the Angel Feather player and player 2 be the Murakumo player. So player 1 rides into Arabaki and gets the draw off the on-ride ability and then passes the turn. Player 2 rides into Amatsu Snipe and then proceeds to call another Amatsu Snipe to the rearguard circle, swinging in for 14k and getting the offensive critical trigger, dealing 2 damage. The heal will not go off because it is out of order. So it is now 2-0. The Angel Feather player going into their grade 2 turn, riding Rook well. And I'm not sure if he's going to call some rearguards here. Player 1 is not going to call rearguards. He's going to swing for 9k. And it looks like he's going to be no passed by player 2, getting no triggers there and dealing no damage. Player 2 goes into his grade 2 turn. And it looks like he's going to ride into the Mandala clone, grade 2, and then calling, I believe that is a left, or I forget what that is, I can't tell. I think it's a left arrestor. So he's going to guard that for 5k and then take the Vanguard swing, which is going to deal another critical, but he's going to get the heal off this time, staying at 3 damage and getting that Zerakiel in the damage for those wonky-honky plays. So that's a good setup for the Angel Feather player, especially since their matchup right now is pretty unfavorable for being able to go into Metatron this game. So player 1 go into Zerakiel first and then call Hesidio for the skill, swapping the crit for the heal trigger and getting the extra 5k shield there for defensive opportunities later on. And then he's going to swing the almost vanilla 23k, getting the +3 off of Zerakiel's skill, and getting a heal trigger for the first check and another Hesidio for the second check. So it is now 2-1 with the Murakumo player in the lead going into their grade 3 turn. To ride into Zanbaku, getting the first Excel marker there. Counterblasting and Soul Blasting for Zanbaku skill. Player 2 is going to fetch another arrestor. He's going to get the other arrestor, of course. He's not going to be able to do the right arrestor skill to be able to stun the Vanguard, but he is going to get the ride lock, so the only way out of this is to use the Zerakiel and damage zone skill to re-ride from the damage zone. So that's the only way he's going to get a protect gift out of that, but he'll still be able to do that since he has it face up there, and as long as he doesn't counterblast it, he will be fine. Swinging in for some pretty hefty numbers with the Vanguard, taking the attack, player 1 will take 1 damage, and getting the defensive draw trigger is always helpful. So it's now 3-1. And the only other attack that's going to go off is the arrestor on the Excel marker there. So it looks like it's going to be a pretty back and forth game, especially if he's going to be denying damage to the Zanbaku player there. So it's still 3-1, so it could go either way depending on how well player 1 sets up his board and possibly any of his further ride opportunities. So calling the Hesidio to use your skill, he's going to swap the, I believe, draw trigger. Yep, he's going to swap the draw trigger for the second copy of Zerakiel in the damage zone, so he'll be able to do that later on. Good setup opportunity, especially for a long play game like this, where you can make great ride lock, from being able to do anything. He won't be able to go into Metatron at all this game unless he plays his turns out right. He probably won't be able to go into Metatron for the remainder of the game. So he's going to swing 11k at the arrestor on Excel marker and then swing 23 at the Vanguard. He's going to get the critical trigger for the first check. And he's going to give all effects to the Vanguard there. And the second check is going to be Circadian there. So the extra 5k shield on that grade 1 vanilla is kind of helpful, especially against certain matchups. This one included with all the multi-attack going on. So really solid, putting the Zanbaku player 2 damage. Player 2 is now tied up to player 1 in terms of damage, but player 2 will be going into his turn now, and he'll be able to deal a bit more damage and put on a bit more pressure. He's not going to ride, instead he's going to use Zanbaku's skill to fetch another arrestor from the deck, calling the other arrestor that he needs to get the combo off. He is going to ride lock the Angel Feather player from being able to do anything during their next turn. Really trying to figure out what he wants to do here. He's got a nice set of open spots to do a lot of good stuff. He's going to call, I believe, it's a Million Rat. So he calls a Million Rat to the front row right circle and calls one from deck. The one from deck is going to get minus 4k, but since it's in a column with something else, it's still going to be able to hit, which is fine. You're really just trying to focus on a lot of multi-attacks with this kind of setup. So really interested, especially with the new stuff coming out in set 4, to see how well Murakumo keeps up as a deck, whether you're playing Zanbaku Zengeki, or you're playing Mandala with Shiryuki, or you're just playing straight Mandala still or straight Shiryuki. So swinging in a couple times, taking the first attack and then guarding the second rear guard, and now PGing the Vanguard swing. I believe he gets a draw trigger off of that swing there from the Vanguard swing, and then he's going to guard for 32 at that 29 with no skill. Since he's out of soul, he's not going to be able to get that extra 5k power with the Arrestor on Excel. Going into the next grade 3 turn, player 1's going to use a Rakiel skill from the damage to ride and get another Protect gift. Really good setup from that previous turn to be able to continuously ride turn after turn, even though he's being ride locked by Zanbaku, being prevented from using Metatron, which arguably is the better grade 3 for this instance in the game. But he's still going to be able to keep it up. He's going to swing rear for 23 with Zarakio getting the crit, giving the power to the Vanguard and the crit to rear, and then dealing that rear guard some hefty damage and sending it to the drop zone. So now it's 3 to 4 still, but the Zanbaku player is out of counterblast, so he's not going to be able to do any kind of ride locking this turn. Therefore, the Angel Feather player on the right will still be able to go into Metatron, and be able to do some plays next turn, kind of evening out the damage count. So he's going to call the Zanbaku from hand to the front row Excel circle there, and not use the other Excel circle in the front, just because of lack of cards in hand. So swinging Vanguard first, I believe this is just for a straight 19. Player 1's going to guard for no pass with the crit and Doctoroid Circadian. And he's going to get the draw and another grade 1, I believe. Player 2 anyway. Swinging with the front row rear guard circle there for, I believe that's just 14. Takes the damage and gets the offensive or the defensive heal trigger. So that's a base 23k Zarakil there. He's going to heal the Million Ray Pegasus. And the only other attack that's going to go off is the front row Zanbaku for the tie, getting guarded by Doctoroid Circadian. Now riding into Metatron, to do that, he's going to be able to pull off her skill, counterblasting the 1000 Ray and the heal trigger. He's got two options here. He's got the Arabaki and he's got the 1000 Ray, so the ideal option here would be the 1000 Ray. That's what he goes for. He's going to call that out, having the extra 10k for a boost, especially when he sets up later, possibly for a Feather Palace to go into really hefty hard guarding plays and attacks with the extra crit and a guard restrict would be really ideal, just because this is the ideal booster for Feather Palace. So trying to decide if he wants to call anything to the front row. Player 1 looking with a ton of cards in hand to really do some setup. Not sure what he wants to do here, but he has that opportunity to get another column going with a pretty hefty swing. He kind of wants to uneven the damage here. He wants to kind of bring it up in his favor. So he's just going to call up the 1000 Ray to the front row, and it's going to be just an AK flat. And it looks like he's going to swing 35 at the front row Zanbaku, getting the offensive draw and the offensive crit. That's going to make 1000 Ray a 28k swinging in with an extra critical. And it looks like he's going to swing Vanguard and deal 2 damage, putting it from 3 to 5. Putting him in the lead, but that's really not the most ideal place, just because now Zanbaku has access to the ride lock skill. He won't get the Vanguard stun, but he will get the ride lock, so the Angel Feather player might be relying on either damage checking another Zarakio or trying to swap one in later, or possibly just using Metatron's secondary skill to see if he can't get something defensive to really bring it back to in his favor. Got player 2 trying to fill up his Excel circles there. He still just has that 1 million rat in the front row. I'm not sure what he's trying to do with that, but he does have some opportunities to make some calls. He's going to call it back, and I don't know what he calls there. I believe he just calls another Mandala clone. I can't really tell from the glare. He's going to drive check and get no triggers, including that grade 3. That's not going to be helpful for defensive plays next turn. The defensive draw from player 1 is really key, especially now that he's at 4 damage. Sitting at a 22k base really just makes it harder for... Oh, there's a Arrestor, sorry, for the front row grade 2 that the player 2 calls. So... not sure what's going on here. Alright, so he passed after, yeah, the player 2 passed after that, and the Injured Feather player just took his turn, going off of Metatron's second skill, getting the critical trigger on the damage check there, sitting at 30k base for his Vanguard swing there. His Vanguard column sitting at a pretty hefty size, but that is just pretty much PG bait for this time around. So, calling Raquel and using her skill, she's going to call, I believe, yep, she's going to call the 1000 Ray from the top of his damage zone there, or his drop zone, sorry. Counterblasting the Raquel from his damage zone to pay the cost. Or the Yarabaki, sorry. Swinging in for 30k. Looks like he's going to swing Vanguard for 30k. And we're going to see if he's going to use the perfect guard for this attack there. Player 2 really sitting on a lot of cards in hand. Player 1 really needs to see if he can't get a Feather Palace out on the board to really eat up some of that and just kind of put some pressure on. Otherwise, it's going to be a really prolonged game and he might deck out before player 2 does. So swinging in for, I want to say that's 17 at the Vanguard. He's going to need a 10k shield for that. He's going to guard with, I believe, it's just another grade 1. I can't tell what it is from the glare. But going into his next turn, player 2 is going to re-ride into Mandala. Really interesting choice at this point, just because he still has that open counterblast. He really can see that there's really no opportunity in sitting on Zanbaku still, and being able to superior call stuff with Mandala Lord and kind of powering up a little bit might be his better option here to try and whittle away at player 1's hand. Definitely a really good strat. We're just going to see how that plays out in this next turn. They're both really sitting at low deck counts at this point. You can definitely see that both decks are getting really thin for both players here. So now he's using Mandala's skill to make a copy of Amatsu Snipe and calling it to the front row Excel circle that he just did. And calling, I believe, another Mandala Lord to that front row Excel circle over the Zanbaku. Yep. So, actually no, it wasn't a Zanbaku, it was a Arrestor in that front Excel circle there. Sorry about that. So, sitting at 5 damage still, it's still 5-4. Really looking to try and see if he can't pace this game out or really try and finish this turn. Player 1 still has a good amount of guard opportunity in his hand, so that might not be the case this turn. Calling, it looks like nope, he's not going to call anything after all. He's going to use Mandala's skill to power up his Vanguard and the Mandala he just called to the front row Excel circle. So swinging with, looks like he's going to swing with Vanguard first at the Vanguard here. And it looks like the player 1 is just going to use the Protect gift to nullify that attack, discarding the Armighty. Definitely not usable at this point in the game just because he doesn't want to try and thin out too much, especially since they're both getting really low on deck count. Trying to thin out to get rear guards later in this game is just not ideal, especially since there aren't any really viable targets for his next turn in the damage zone. He really would want to see a Feather Palace at this point. He's not going to see it. He is going to see, though, the defensive draw trigger to sit him at 22k. Really getting lucky on these defensive trigger checks really was saving him in this game and keeping his hand size pretty hefty. He's going to intercept that last call attack there. This front row attack is going to be swinging for 25, guarding that for 27. Again, for I think 22, I believe this attack is. Double checking to see what he's got in damage zone to see if he can't set up anything next turn. I know I can see those Aceedials in his hand. He definitely wants to save those for some big plays. Definitely not going to happen, though. He's going to go with the other Aceedial in his hand and then take his turn. So since he wasn't ride locked, he is going to be able to go into Metatron once more. He's going to go into getting that Protect gift and then using her skill to call out another rear guard and healing 1 damage. So he's going to call the Yarabaki from there. It's pretty much his only real viable target with all of those triggers in there. He has some recycle opportunities with Metatron, but aside from that, really no viable targets. So here's to hoping to see if he's got a Feather Palace in his hand to really put on some pressure, because he really needs to do that this turn. And especially with that low deck count, it might not be something that he's going to be able to carry over next turn. He definitely wants to see if he can end the game this turn. Otherwise, it's going to be just a little bit out of favor, and he's going to deck out before he can really do anything. Damage checking the Armighty off of Metatron's second skill. Not really looking favorable. He really wanted to see a trigger off that check there. Calling out a Feather Palace in front of the 1000 Ray. It's a really good setup right there. So hopefully he sees some trigger checks on these next two opportunities here. And he's going to pull out the Zerakiel from hand to give that front row plus 3k. He's going to swing with Vanguard first. Really hoping to see some triggers here. So player 2 is going to perfect guard the attack. So we know that those trigger checks are now going to officially be going to that rear guard if he sees them. So these first two checks here, we got a Million Ray and another Armighty. Not what we wanted to see in this turn. Definitely not looking favorable for player 1 here. That's going to be swinging in for 53k with the extra boost from 1000 Ray and then the skill from Feather Palace. That's going to come in with for 53k extra crit. And player 2 is going to guard with a ton of shield. I believe he overguards here a little bit. Yeah, he catches it. So he's got the 2 heal triggers and he has 52. And he is just, yeah, he's double checking. He's going to intercept there instead of guarding with the extra 15k shield that he was going to drop there. So, and that is going to be the last attack with Zerakiel for 23. He's going to guard for 28 with that crit he just took back from that last guard attempt. Now going into his next turn, player 2 really looking to see if he can't make some setups here. He's going to re-ride Mandela once more. Having 4 front row Excel circles is just not what player 1 wants to see at this stage of the game. It's just really not in his favor. He's at a low deck count, and if he takes any damage, he might be in a not so good spot to really set up and really kind of push his next turn. So player 2 is really going to put the pressure on that Feather Palace over there on rearguard circle. And player 1 is going to try and save it, really trying to make sure that he has that win con, because the Feather Palace is his real win con in this situation. If he can't pull that off next turn, then it's going to be unfavorable for him to try and do anything big. The heal trigger there is not what player 1 wanted to see at this point. It's going to put him down to 4 damage, and he's not going to really want to try and swing at Vanguard now, just because his rear guard attack, the only thing he's going to be able to swing with is the Feather Palace. That other column there is just going to be kind of sitting dead and kind of looking to poke rear guards. Unless he gets some critical triggers, it's not going to be favorable for the Angel Feather player. He's going to let the Feather Palace finally die. It looks like he has a second copy in hand, so not too worried about that. But really just for the bait and see if he can't just kind of bait for some more attacks on that rear guard circle. Another attack coming in pretty hefty. He's going to perfect guard that once more with the Protect Gift. Another attack from Amatsu Snipe on the Excel circle there. I believe that's for 22. Going in at Zerakiel. He's going to guard that for 27. Another attack coming in as Zerakiel for, I believe that is just 17. Guarding that once more. He's really, player 2 is really trying to put the pressure on that Zerakiel there. And that is the end of player 2's turn. So player 1's really trying to figure out how he wants to set this up. I see that Feather Palace in hand. He's really trying to contemplate how he's going to go about this turn, trying to make that as hefty of a column as possible. It's definitely a really tight spot for both players, for the player especially, since they're sitting at low amounts of cards in deck. So, using Metatron's second skill, he's going to recycle the draw trigger. Not super good at this point, but it really doesn't matter. Probably is going to be one of the last checks that player 1 does this game, so that draw sting on the bottom won't be too big of a deal. So now he's all set up. Zerakiel's skill giving the front row plus 3k, making that Feather Palace seem just a bit more aggressive. Player 2 really checking to see where his triggers are at, just really trying to see what the odds are of player 1 really hitting some triggers in this turn. So player 1 is going to swing with Vanguard first. Player 2 really contemplating what he's going to do here, because I'm not sure if he has that perfect guard. He does not have the perfect guard in hand, so he's going to guard from hand for, I believe that's 2 to pass on the Vanguard. So, checks here. We got a crit on the first check. Contemplating here. He really should be giving it to the rear. He's going to give it to the Vanguard. Ooh, that was just not a smart play from player 1. He should have loaded that up on a Feather Palace, made that attack just that much harder to guard, and then given that second crit, not the second crit, the critical bonus to the Zerakiel on the left, just to make that hit something other than just for 1 damage. And now that Feather Palace is going to come in at a much lower 53k with the extra crit and guard restrict. That really should have been something that went to Zerakiel for the crit, and then the power bonus should have gone to Feather Palace just to really put on that guard pressure. That would have been the end of it there. But player 2 was able to guard all of it out, and now he's going to go into what looks like it may be his final turn of the game. So now he's getting all set up. Looks like he's going to just move up the Million Rat and call another, I think that's just an 8k base over there, and then he calls another Million Rat to the front row, filling up his board, really trying to end this game this turn. So swinging Vanguard first, double checking to see Mandala's second ability for the power, contemplating if he wants to guard it or not. He doesn't have as many cards in hand as before, but he's going to use the Protect Gift to stop it here. First 2 checks, we got a draw trigger. Oof, not super good looking for the Angel Feather player now. That extra draw trigger is going to play really favorably into player 2's next turn, especially with their low deck counts. And then nothing on the second check there. But that perfect guard really was not a good sign. Doesn't look like player 1 has enough cards in deck to even consider swinging next turn. So that really was not a good sign. Contemplating what he wants to guard with here. He doesn't have as many cards in hand now. It's really down to the wire. No intercepts in the front row. He's swinging Vanguard. Double checking to see what he's got in hand. He's going to guard with the Almighty. And you got another column over there swinging. I believe that is for 17k. Nope, that is just 16k. 16 or 15k. I can't tell if the booster is a 7k or not from this angle. But it's still a 5k shield regardless. I'm not sure if the power is there. So player 1's double checking the power of the Excel units over there. And they're all well over 20k, so that's just definitely not what player 1 wants to see in this position. This is a really tough spot. If he has to take that attack for the defensive trigger, he's definitely not going to have enough cards in deck to really push next turn. He's going to take it, he's going to get the heal, and it's going to go off because player 2 is still at 4 damage. But that's definitely not a good sign. And now player 2 is really going to put the heat on Feather Palace because of that defensive trigger. Swinging 3 of his front row units now at Feather Palace is definitely not a good sign. The last one swinging in at Feather Palace with only a PG in hand, he has to let it die. Just not ideal. Now player 1's going into his turn, and it looks like he only has 2 cards left in deck. Definitely not favorable. This probably will be the last turn. That PG really just put the hurt on. Calling out the no seal for the poke. Really not going to be helpful in this situation. Putting back the heal trigger, getting the crit. He definitely shouldn't be giving it to his Vanguard in this situation. He does not have enough cards in deck to even swing. So he's going to have to go to one of the 2 columns that he has set up. And ideally this should go to this Zerakiel column here. Just because that'll put it at a 33k base. With the extra crit that's going to be a bit more favorable. So it's going to go, yep, he's going to put it to the Zerakiel column there. So it looks like he's going to swing with this Zerakiel column first for 33k. And he's going to get perfect guarded because he had that perfect guard from his drive checks last turn. And that, I think, is going to be the last tech he even considers. Nope, he's going to swing with the Vanguard and deck himself out for game. Really anticlimactic way of ending this game for the first game of 2019. But that was a really long and stalemated game. Really goes to show just how much Standard has progressed as a format. So thanks again for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video.